Peace be with you. As I look back over the past decade or so, it seems to me that we are living in a time of shattered peace. After the wars fought by our parents and grandparents, we had started to believe that our civilization had moved on and become mature enough to sustain peace, or at least to keep conflict at a distance. And then Russia invaded Ukraine, and we suddenly saw the consequences of a war that started a safe distance away. Our peace has been shattered. But peace is not just about the absence of war. We had felt confident in scientific advances in healthcare until a pandemic demonstrated just how vulnerable we still are. Our peace has been shattered. We had felt confident in human mastery of our physical environment and of greater and greater mastery until we discovered that our very quest for mastery had contributed to rising sea levels and increasingly devastating natural disasters. So our peace has been shattered. And perhaps on top of all of those international and national level shatterings of peace, many of us have also experienced a shattering of peace at a personal level, with lost hopes and dreams for the future, and with memories that we cannot examine without regret. This second Sunday in Advent invites us to sit with all that shattering, to be stubbornly realistic, because peace is not a denial of reality. We do not keep the peace by pretending. There have been no sharp edges to our lives that have cut into our skin and broken our hearts. Pam spoke last week about hope being a light in the darkness, that if we deny the darkness, we will not see the light. This week we discern true peace by first admitting that the peace we so long for lies shattered in shards around our feet. So let's stay with that image for a while and examine some of those shards as we find them in today's readings. We carefully pick up one fragment from Isaiah, in which a lion and a calf are grazing together, predator and prey, at peace. And we imagine all the predators of our planet, animal and human, turning from violence and seeking the welfare of the vulnerable ones they had been feeding on. No more dictators sending their people to wars to feed their own vanity. Women beginning to walk without fear through the city at night. We imagine people in warring factions, in politics and church, sitting calmly together to discuss their disagreements without ever attacking one another. Can we allow our imaginations to dwell on this image? If we do, we start to admit just how deeply we long for peace and how bitterly we grieve over peace that has been shattered. And so we place that fragment carefully on the wall with some blue tack, and we pick up another shard. And in this one we see a toddler giggling as she plays with snakes. This one is a little more confronting because it touches on a deeper fear, which masks a yet deeper longing. Those of us who have ever been responsible for children know how much they need to explore their world, how much their delight in learning seems designed for a world that is safer than the one we have given them. We want them to be free to explore, and yet we are also responsible for keeping them safe. Our generation seems more aware than most of the dangers our children face. And so we fence them around with loving protections, but then we worry that our protection will make them anxious and restrict their creativity and their natural development. Imagine a world where that was not so. Imagine sending children to school without fear that other children will bully them, or that the education system will force them into a box that they can never fit into without discarding parts of themselves. Imagine knowing that it takes a village to raise a child, as we do know, but imagine knowing that and having absolute confidence that every member of our village will play their part with love and respect. Can we allow our imaginations to dwell on this image? If we do, we start to admit how deeply we long for peace and how bitterly we grieve over the peace that has been shattered. And so we place that fragment carefully on the wall with some blue tack, and we add another shard. This one. Well, in this one we see a burnt out, dead looking tree stump with a little green shoot coming out of it. This is a potent image for Australians, isn't it? Even those of us who have never lived through a bushfire have seen images of their devastation. And then, maybe a year later, we have driven through those black forests and we've seen the green returning, assuring us that devastation is never final. And as we sit with this image, we notice that the stump has a name on it. Jesse. Well, Jesse was the father of King David, and the ancestor, therefore, of the whole Davidic dynasty that ruled Judah. At the time that this image was put into words by Isaiah, the last king in this dynasty had been killed, and the people were being ruled by foreign kings. But the image expresses more than simply the desire for a return to self-rule. Throughout the historical and prophetic writings of the Jewish scriptures, we see rulers doing a really crappy job. We see self-aggrandizing national leaders and a complete disregard for the needs and aspirations of those without power, and for the laws that required kings to care for those without power. While the people were longing for a new king, for a Messiah from the line of David, they did not want or need a king that was like the kings of the past. They needed a leader who would love justice and bring equity, especially for those without money or power. And so as we look into that little fragment, we acknowledge our own longing for our world to be administered with justice and equity. We have seen many more systems of government come and go than Isaiah could have imagined. we have had many more opportunities for our hopes and expectations in our leaders and systems to be crushed, to be shattered. In our cynical moments, we lament that all human leadership is bound to fail. Power inevitably corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We can, in those cynical moments, see the whole enterprise of human government as a dead, burnt-out stump. And as we let our heart break over all the damage that all the tyrants over time have done, can we let ourselves believe in that little green shoot growing up out of that stump? A shoot of justice, equity, peace. Can we allow our imaginations to dwell on this image? And if we do, we start to admit how deeply we long for peace and how bitterly we grieve over peace that has been shattered. And so we place that fragment carefully on the wall with some blue tack, and we pick up another shard. This time we see a fierce-looking man dressed in strange clothes and living on a bizarre diet. By his clothing, he identifies with the ancient prophets who called out those self-serving kings and taught the people to believe in a better future. And he's eating locusts. So, locusts. If you've ever lived in an agricultural community, you will know what locusts mean. A plague of locusts can strip an entire crop in seconds flat. A year of work can be lost in a morning. Even in our time, locust plagues can affect entire communities because if the farmers have no money, the local businesses suffer. But in a subsistence culture, it is so much worse. The crops that are stripped might have been the majority of the food supply for a village for a whole year. Gone. So here, John the Baptizer is eating locusts, devouring the devourer, turning something that destroys life into something that nourishes life. Grace Tame, last year's Australian of the Year, who survived sexual abuse in high school and grew to be a fierce prophet like John the Baptist. Grace has tattooed on the back of her hand the words, "Eat my fear." That's what John was doing when he ate locusts. He was shouting into the violent darkness of life, "You send me locusts? Okay, then I eat locusts for breakfast." Literally. So, where does this fragment fit? It's a little different from the others. It's not presenting us with an image of the world as it should be. Neither does it show quiet acquiescence with the world as it is. It's neither idealistic nor pragmatic. It is fiercely defiant. It is a demand that the people do better. In his demand that the people do better, he was fiercely holding on to the belief that the people can do better, that repentance is possible, that we can turn around, change direction, walk together to a better world. He was insisting that those longings of our heart for genuine peace are there for a reason, because we are longing for something real, something possible. John the Baptizer stands in between harsh reality and sweet longing as a bridge between them, calling out that there is a way from one to the other, that people can prepare the way, create the road with their own turned around lives as they look for the one who will come along that road to be that Davidic king who is nothing like his ancestors, who leads with peace and justice for everyone. And that is where we sit in Advent. At Christmas, we celebrate because the King has come, but in Advent, we acknowledge that we are still waiting for the completion of his transition of our reality from violence to peace. And so we pick up one last fragment from today's readings, and we see a group of followers of Jesus living about 20 years after his resurrection in the capital of the empire that is known for the anti-peace peace, the Pax Romana, where highly disciplined armies had mowed down resistance, had created a desert and called it peace. They have received a letter from Paul, this community of Jesus followers, and this letter calls them to stand fierce and strong like John the Baptizer as a resistance cell in the heart of the empire. They need to be just as disciplined as the Roman army, but instead of practicing war, they are to practice peace, to train for peace, to arm themselves for peace. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like putting up with each other, putting up with each other's failings, serving each other rather than serving themselves. It means using whatever strength they have to protect those who are weak rather than exploiting those who are weak. It looks like Jews welcoming Gentiles and Gentiles welcoming Jews and all sitting down at a family meal together. And so as we stick that fragment on the wall with the others, we can stand back and look at this reconstruction of peace, this unshattered peace. We look at the idyllic world of the Isaiah fragments, so disturbing because of how far away the longings of our heart are from the realities of our lives. We could harden our hearts with cynicism and say such a vision could never be, or we can strengthen our resolve to be fierce and prophetic like John the Baptizer, eating our fear and growing stronger in opposition to violence. Will we eat those locusts? Will we put up with each other's failings? Will we choose to serve each other rather than ourselves? If we do, we will be a fierce enclave of peace in a world of violence. And empowered by the Spirit of peace, we will hold this ground for the Prince of Peace until he returns and the shattered peace is fully restored and the longing of our hearts finds its fulfillment in the peaceful reign of Christ. Until then, peace be with you.